Lost Ark. A lot of people have recommended this game to me throughout the past few months, and yet, despite all of that, I haven't really had the chance to look into this game at all, until now. Today, I finally gave Lost Ark a try for the very first time, and so in this video, I'll give you my absolute day one first impression of PvP on Lost Ark from the perspective of a BDO ninja. You can probably guess already, but the main thing that I'm interested in when it comes to Lost Ark is the arena. After all, I am first and foremost a PvP player, so a gear equalized PvP arena is really what I'm all about. Now, it took me around 6 hours of questing to unlock the arena, which I think is a pretty good pacing. I mean, it's way faster than making a BDO season character by comparison, and that's the closest thing we got to equal gear on that game, so I have no complaints here. Now, unlike BDO, where you can learn every skill for your class, it looks like in Lost Ark you can only choose 9 skills to use, and need to decide what points to allocate to those skills. What I don't like, however, is the fact that your 9th skill appears to be level gated. What I mean by that is even though you're allowed to put the skill on your skill bar, the game doesn't actually let you use it until you have already unlocked it through PvE. Now, I don't know how much difference this actually makes. I would imagine that not having an entire 9th skill would be a pretty notable disadvantage, but maybe that's not true and maybe you don't actually need it. I don't really know. But what I do know is that whether it's one way or the other, gating the skill behind level 50 is a decision that's just completely beyond me. Because I mean, the game is already willing to go so far as giving out free skill points and having gear equalization. So I can't imagine this being some sort of pay-to-win ploy to get people to spend money in order to be competitive or something like that. So I can't fathom why they would stop one step short of full equalization by not having the 9th skill be unlocked. I'm sure they have what they consider as a valid reason, but it doesn't make me happy as a PvP player. Now, the arena also seems to have some sort of stat distribution, which I haven't encountered yet in PvE. But maybe this is just a way to allow you to select what type of gear you want to equip, without having to create some sort of arena-only gear like with BDO's trial characters. If that's the case, then this is actually a very elegant solution actually. My only complaint here is that I don't get why there is no tooltip for these stats to explain what they give exactly. In my character information, I can see for example that 126 swiftness will increase my attack speed by 3.96% and reduce my cooldowns by 4.95%. But how much does 1 swiftness give exactly? And what would my attack speed and cooldown reduction be if I had 750? I don't know. I feel like this type of information is pretty important for making informed build decisions, because right now, I'm just putting in something arbitrary and hoping that it's as good as it sounds. Granted, BDO is quite notorious for not explaining what stats do either, which makes Lost Ark looks better in comparison, but I don't think that means Lost Ark shouldn't do even better. Anyway, moving on. From what I can tell, there are 4 game modes for Arena. A 3v3, a 6-man free-for-all, a team 1v1 mode, and some sort of co-op PvE mode I guess. You can also create a custom game room, but it looks like you can only choose between 3v3 or team 1v1 as the game mode. So I'm kind of disappointed that there doesn't appear to be a pure 1v1 mode for this game, because in my opinion, 1v1s are a really good way for people to learn and get better at the game, even if it's done non-competitively. BDO at the very least have trial characters for dueling, even if there is no matchmaking. I don't know if Lost Ark has something similar, but so far, I haven't even seen anything that resembles BDO's dueling arena. The team elimination mode is technically 1v1, but the way it works is that you're put into a team of 3, and each player goes 1 by 1 until they die, and then the next player tags in. I was hoping that it could have been something where everyone fought at the same time, maybe in separate arenas, or even some sort of round-robin tournament where you got to fight against everyone. But as it stands, all we get is this very time-consuming mode, where on average, you're probably just going to be fighting 1 out of the 6 people you queued with a third of the time, and just sit there waiting for your turn the other 2/3 of the time. And God forbid if you're the last person on your team, but your teammate manages to beat all 3 opponents without you, then you don't even get a turn. I can only see this mode being used in tournament settings at a very high level, where things like deciding exactly who goes first, second, or third is a huge deal. But for your average day-to-day gameplay, it's just so inefficient, and I'm not very impressed by this. Now, between the Team Deathmatch and Deathmatch mode, I would assume that the Team Deathmatch mode is probably the only competitive mode here. From what I can tell, in both of these modes, respawns are enabled, with the winner simply being the team or player that gets the most kills after a certain period of time. Except in Team Deathmatch, kills rewards the entire team, whereas in Deathmatch, kills only rewards whoever got the last hit, regardless of how much damage they contributed. So I can't really imagine that this would promote very fun interactive gameplay if everyone only focused on winning. It would be kind of like playing the old Castle Ruins Red Battlefield on BDO, where you just gotta play passive to protect your points when you got a lot of them. For Team Deathmatch however, the mode itself is perfectly fine, it's just standard 3v3 with respawn. You queue in solo, get matched with 2 other players, and fight against another team that's matched in the same way. But the thing is, if I wanted to be competitive in something and to be ranked on it, then I prefer to either be playing solo or with people I know, not with randoms. Because for me, I want every win or loss to be fully deserved. I want my win rate to directly correlate with my improvement in skill, and I want every match to have opportunities where I can learn from and improve on. But when the mode matches me with random teammates, I feel like these conditions can no longer be met. And it's not that I'm trying to imply that everyone else is bad or anything. What I'm saying is that no matter who I am with, and no matter how good they may be, it would still be difficult to synergize with someone who you only meet once in a blue moon. And this lack of synergy will inevitably cause mistakes and misplays that are not due to skills, but just purely due to differences in ideas or playstyle. There may be moments that I can't learn from and improve on because it would only happen when teaming with a specific player. And there may be wins or losses that are more so correlated with the random matchmaking of teammates rather than anyone's individual skill. Stuff like this is another reason why I enjoy open world games like BDO so much, because it's so much easier to choose who you team up with. Now, I get that you can play team deathmatch with friends, and I don't have to play with randoms if I don't want to, but that's basically another way of saying that I can't play the game if I don't have at least 3 friends online, which is pretty limiting for a PvP game. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. The next thing I want to look at is the combat. Obviously, it goes without saying that there are a lot of differences between Lost Ark and BDO. There's the isometric camera angle, the click to move, the mouse cursor to aim. But as far as I'm concerned, controlling my characters feels smooth, using skills feels smooth, and I think that's what actually matters. A difference in camera angle and control scheme isn't what's going to stop me from playing the game. But what could stop me from playing though, is the overall feel and pacing of the fights. BDO is probably the fastest MMO I've ever personally played. And even with 750 points in swiftness to increase attack speed and reduce skill cooldown, this is just an area that Lost Ark simply cannot compete with. But I don't think Lost Ark is trying to compete with BDO in terms of fast-paced combat anyways. Quite the opposite, Lost Ark seems to be intentionally much slower and methodical by design. First, there is the 8 skill limit. With Ninja on BDO, you have something like 25 useful skills in total, with at least 12 or more skills being rotated on and off cooldown at any given points in the fight. You can often just do what I call fishing for CC, and throw out a random skill without even caring if it lands or not. There are skills that you just throw in for protection just in case, there are times where you just completely disregard the skill's effects and just use it for chip damage. And in Lost Ark, I doubt there's gonna be much of any of that. There does appear to be some form of protected skills, as I often find skills that are marked either super armor paralysis or have push immunity, but the game seems to have kind of neglected to explain what this actually means. But at the very least, from what I can tell, these are not the same catch-all super armor that we all know and love from BDO. So with less skills, less protections, and longer cooldowns, I can see there being a need to give a lot more consideration for exactly which skill to use and when. I can see there being a lot of emphasis on the neutral game and having to be a lot more deliberate with your spacing and opening. And I can see it being a lot different from the constant attack and pressure that BDO Ninja offers. But is that necessarily something where Lost Ark is doing better than BDO? That I don't know. I feel like both games are emphasizing different skills in different areas. I don't feel like Lost Ark's slower-paced neutral game is objectively better than BDO's fast-paced skill rotation and cooldown management. I feel like they are 2 completely different games, and it's really up to the individual which style of PvP they prefer. Now, there is one thing I can say that I wouldn't miss about BDO though, and that is the SA trading and the block breaking, since I find that these 2 mechanics heavily emphasize gear rather than skill. But I feel like in some sense, this is a result of BDO's gear and power creep over time more so than anything else, since there have been methods in the past where SA trading and block breaking was at a minimum in all but large-scale PvP. So for myself who enjoys BDO combat, playing Lost Ark feels really more like a trade-off between not dealing with SA trading and block breaking in exchange for not having faster-paced combat. And it's kind of an apples to orange comparison really, because the former is more of a matter of gear creep, while the latter is a matter of game design. BDO's PvP could be salvaged, it's just a matter of if they will or not. Next is CC breaks in Lost Ark. On BDO, once you're CC'd, it's basically over for pretty much all but maybe 3 or 4 classes. Nothing short of praying that your opponent screws up, lucking out on CC resist, or completely outgearing your opponent is going to save you. So all of the skill expression on BDO happens before either of you lands a CC. Once a CC lands, survival depends on luck or gear, not skill. On Lost Ark, everyone gets a CC break. But it's also not exactly some sort of catch-all CC break that you can use whenever you want. It's more like BDO's V-emergency escape, and how you can't CC break out of knockdowns or stiff. So I would imagine that knowing how to play around the CC break, knowing when to use your CC break, or knowing when to not use a CC break would be a major point of skill expression. But unfortunately, Lost Ark seems to have neglected to provide information on what these conditions actually are, so I'm just taking a guess here that it actually is a CC break rather than some other mechanic. But again, is that really a reason for me to choose Lost Ark over BDO? I would say that on an individual duel-by-duel basis, I can see this being a plus. With how punishing CCs are on BDO, it's not uncommon for fights to be won randomly, for a lack of a better word. Maybe we both try to CC each other at the same time, but I CC slightly faster. Maybe I tried to use a protected skill, but I desynced and got caught anyway. Or maybe I resisted their CC and caught them when they should have otherwise caught me. And if you were to just look at that singular fight in isolation, it would be difficult to tell who really was the better player overall there. A CC break would make it more obvious who the better player is, by showing who can catch their opponent more consistently. After all, that's why Arena of Archer tournaments are played with emergency escape enabled. But not everything is a tournament. For the most part, BDO is a game where you'll often fight people not just once or twice, but hundreds of times. And once you look at all these duels as a whole, the randomness starts to average out, and it really does become clear who is playing better as the win percentages stabilize. But here's another thing to consider. All this time, I'm talking about the benefits that CC Break would bring to 1v1 duels on BDO, and yet Lost Ark doesn't even have 1v1 queues. So I think this is a bit of a missed opportunity, because I always felt that 1v1s on BDO were a bit weak, and this could have easily made me excited about doing 1v1s again, and been a huge plus for Lost Ark in my books. But as it stands, there's only 3v3s with respawns, so I don't think I really care about this mechanic right now nearly as much as I could have been. And that brings me to the final point. The noticeably longer TTK, or time to kill. Again, on BDO, whoever catches their opponent first is almost always the winner, so BDO has a very fast time to kill. But even if Lost Ark did not have a CC break, it doesn't seem like anyone is going to be dying to the first, second, or even third CC they take. The TTK on Lost Ark is just that much longer. So I can see Lost Ark being a significantly more teamwork-oriented game, where you have to properly assist attack to be able to kill anyone, and where peeling for your teammate can actually mitigate significant damage. Now, if you were someone who read the video description of the BDO montages I used to make, you'll know that the lack of options for teamwork in that game used to be a major complaint for me. Ninja has almost no synergy with half the classes in the game. Ninja and Ranger simply did not work as a composition, because Ninja was a selfish class that was good at surviving alone, but had minimal options to help his teammate. But Ninja made up for that by being able to kill multiple enemies alone as well, which is possible only because of BDO's short TTK. And yet, for me to now play Lost Ark, it feels almost backwards. Just because I didn't want BDO to force me to play solo, it doesn't mean I want Lost Ark to now force me to play in teams. Now, I understand that it's almost impossible for a game to be good at both solo and team play, but yet, I would certainly miss the fast TTK that BDO offers me. But enough of that. Who cares if one game takes more skills or require more teamwork or not, right? What really matters is whether the gameplay and mechanics are fun. Well, therein lies the problem. Lost Ark has so far neglected to explain pretty much any of its mechanics. Like, what is paralysis? What is a push? What is stagger, and what's the difference between low, mid, and high? You can't just be throwing invented terms at people without defining what those terms mean. Now, this is definitely not a problem exclusive to Lost Ark. BDO is very much guilty of the same thing with its lack of explanation for super armor, frontal guard, iframe, and CC limits. But this is once again why I argue that a pure 1v1 mode is necessary, because when lacking such definitions, 1v1s are a much better way to figure out how the game works, compared to the chaos of 3v3 or free-for-all. Another thing that would be useful is training dummies. Not the PvE mobs that the game throws at you in the training room, but mobs that actually follow PvP mechanics. Because it's pretty clear by now that skills in this game behave differently in PvE compared to PvP. Although, there is this grayed out training area, and maybe that's actually what it does. But if it is, then the game definitely has not said anything about it, and I have no idea how to unlock it. Now then, I'm not saying that the game isn't good, and I'm sure that over time, I'll have a better understanding of how the mechanics work. Lost Ark is fun in its own right, and I do plan to continue to play it, at least for now. But this is a video about how I feel about Lost Ark as a BDO player, and so far, I don't feel like the game has yet to show me the ways in which it's better than BDO, at least from a gameplay and mechanical standpoint. Everything that I've seen so far is a bit of a give and take. Lost Ark gives me less RNG, but takes away BDO's fast-paced combat. Lost Ark gives me gameplay without SA trading, but takes away half of my skill slots. Lost Ark gives me team play, but takes away solo play. The only thing that Lost Ark is really doing objectively better than BDO so far is the existence of a gear-equalized PvP arena. But BDO is also releasing its own arena soon, and I'm pretty excited to see how well BDO's arena will stack up against Lost Ark's. Now, I'm not making a commitment as to which game I'll play just yet, but it does feel like that I'm only considering playing Lost Ark right now merely because BDO is just in a much worse state by comparison. I think, depending on how things turn out, and what decisions get made by both companies, I could just as easily be convinced to play either BDO or Lost Ark. But anyway, once again, this is just my day 1 first impressions. If you wanted actual information about this game, then I highly recommend checking out the game yourself, or actually reading a guide instead. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching the video.